Hi, this is David Miranda, General Counsel and past President of the New York State Bar Association. Welcome to Miranda Warnings. You have the right to remain listening. This week on Miranda Warnings, we're very pleased to have the New York State Bar Association's President, Richard Lewis. He's the 126th President of the New York State Bar Association, and he's of counsel to the law firm of Hinman, Howard & Cattell in Binghamton. Welcome, Dick.
Thank you for having me here. I'm looking forward to being Mirandized.
Well, it's wonderful to have you back. You're a repeat guest. We had a conversation right when you were about to start your term, and now we're at the back end of your term, and laid out kind of your agenda. And you had a tremendously active year, and I want to talk about some of the highlights. The first one, you were focused when we spoke last year. You said your term was going to be about addressing the practical concerns of our members and about attorneys in New York State. Talk a little bit about what you did over the course of the year to address attorneys' law practice issues.
Sure. When we started out, I had expected to spend a significantly greater time on these practical issues, but unfortunately, or fortunately, events get in the way. But we have had a lot of success with regard to approaching the issues that confront lawyers. For example, we've dealt with the Chief Administrative Judge Zayas. We've met with him on a number of occasions, along with his deputy, Judge St. George. And we've talked about a continuing topic, the court rules. And we have been successful. We've had an open door with Judge Zayas. He's been very accommodating to us, and he's looked into our issues. And just recently, we had some significant changes in the court rules. Similarly, we have, not only because of our initiatives, but because of the initiatives of some of our sections, we've had some success in dealing with issues involving the CPLR. Obviously, those are things that confront lawyers every day. But in addition to that, we have lobbied very hard and successfully with regard to fees for court-appointed lawyers. We have lobbied with regard to the notary issue, which we are very optimistic. We have not succeeded yet, but both houses of the legislature have passed it. We are just hoping that the governor will sign it in quick order. We've dealt with some things that we were not successful, such as the idea that a licensed New York lawyer has to have a bricks and mortar office. The idea opposing that was passed again by the legislature, but unfortunately vetoed. We will continue to work on that. So we've talked to legislators both in the Senate and the Assembly. We've talked to their counsel. We've met with the governor's counsel. And we've been working pretty hard, and there are some of these things that we will continue to work very hard to get more favorable treatment for lawyers and thus their clients.
And so we've made a lot of progress. You've worked obviously over the past year closely with the courts.
Yes.
Chief Administrative Judge Zayas, I know you've worked very closely with the new Chief Judge Rowan Wilson, who's been very supportive.
Fabulous, yes.
And we've worked together on
Right.
a number of items, and those were all very kind of lawyer-based. But you also had, I'm going to say, a substantial number of substantive policy-based issues that you were actively involved in, and I'd like to talk about some of them. Certainly, the Advancing Diversity report that came out that was
Right.
treated with respect and applause nationwide. Combating your task force on combating antisemitism and anti-Asian hate, artificial intelligence, medical aid and dying. And we should talk a little bit about all of those, because I think it's very rare that a president is able to form a task force, have it come up with a report, and then actually see it come to success in its term, and you've done that, I think, as much as anyone. Obviously, the work of the Bar Association carries on year to year, and oftentimes your successes or your future successes are based upon past presidents. But let's talk first about the Advancing Diversity Task Force that I think got a lot of positive recognition for our association.
Yeah, that task force was incredible, and of course, we owe a great deal to our former Secretary of State, our former Secretary of Homeland Security, and and also Brad Karp, and
Attorney General, you meant, not Secretary of
oh,
State.
I'm sorry,
Right.
yes, Attorney General.
Attorney General Lynch and
Yes.
and Brad Karp and
Jay Johnson.
and Jay Johnson, Secretary Johnson, two members of President Obama's cabinet were chairing your task force, which I'm going to say is not typical, and we didn't have a typical report.
No, this report came out in, I think, August. We really started working on it. I was having conversations with Jay Johnson and Brad Karp even before I took office. We anticipated the decision. We, of course, couldn't talk about all this, figure out all the specificity, but we anticipated it, and we formed this task force. And the goal was to act as quickly and efficiently and thoroughly as possible, because we wanted to set up a roadmap for how things were going to be by way of diversity going forward.
And of course, the decision you're talking about is the U.S. Supreme Court's decision that came down in June of 2023, the FSSA, that found that policies of several universities that provided extra benefit and weight to diverse
Right.
applicants was unconstitutional. And so, anticipating that decision that came down, you formed this task force to see how attorneys and institutions can address
Absolutely.
the
And we
Supreme
had a
Court
blue
decision.
ribbon panel. We had people from corporate America. We had people from academia. We had people from government. We had judges. We had a huge cross section. And I will tell you that everyone on that task force worked. And this report came out in record time. I was at an ABA meeting where it was adopted as the policy of the ABA. And
Well, just to give the time frame, right? So the Supreme Court decision came down in June. You had the structure of your task force in place already, and the task force came out with a report that was approved by our executive committee, at least in September of 2023. So
Right.
just a matter of just about
couple
3
months.
months.
Yeah, it was incredible. You don't usually see these reports come out so fast, and that's a tribute to the people that were on this task force. I met a friend of mine at the ABA meeting. She's the president now of the Pennsylvania Bar, and she does work that involves academics, and she says she keeps a copy of this report on her desk. We have gotten raves about this report from California, from Oregon, across the country. So we're very proud of it.
Right. So the report was passed by our House of Delegates, and then received
The
somewhat
ABA?
national acclaim, and you were encouraged to bring it to the ABA. You did. The ABA has adopted the New York State Bar
Absolutely.
Association's report as policy.
Yeah.
You also did something, I think, that was prescient in June of 2023 when you started. You formed a task force about combating anti-Semitism and anti-Asian hate, because it was an issue that you were concerned about, and obviously other members of the bar. And you formed a very high-level task force in June to come up with a report about how we can better address those issues here in New York State. And that task force became extremely relevant after October 7th, the issues that occurred in the Israel and Palestine.
So once again, events tend to affect what we do. And frankly, I thought that report was necessary long before the present war, and because of what was going on throughout the country with regard to anti-Asian hate, anti-Semitism, and specifically in New York and New York City. So we were fortunate again to have people who were absolutely dedicated to this effort, and they came out with an outstanding report, including some discussion of hate crimes, and that report was instrumental in some of the changes to hate crime legislation regarding hate crimes.
Right, so they had their report was passed by our House in January of this year, 2024. It called for some changes to the laws.
Correct.
That make them a little more, a little broader as it pertains to hate crimes. And we were able to advocate for some legislation that was in the New York State Legislature, which actually we were able to have success with
right.
in April.
We were a leading voice, if not the leading voice.
You also formed a task force on medical aid in dying, which
Yes.
is obviously a very sensitive issue to many people. You had a group of people from a variety of perspectives. Why don't you talk a little bit about that group and their report and where we are?
Yeah, so that is also a report that was really done with excellence. We had people from academia, we had people from the medical profession, people from the clergy, people from every ethnic and religious background.
Chaired by Mary Beth Morrissey.
Chaired by Mary Beth Morrissey, who did an absolutely fabulous job. And what I would tell you about that is it's, as you said, a very sensitive issue. It's a religious issue. It's a difficult issue, but it had to be discussed because it's really up front these days with all of the ways that you can keep people alive and sometimes keep them alive against their will. So we're not asking for anyone to choose to die or choose to not die. We're leaving that up to the people, and there's safeguards to make sure that any decision that they make is a well thought out decision and heartfelt, not the choice of someone else.
And of course that task force, I think was unique in that it had it worked very hard. That part wasn't unique. Most of our task forces do work hard, but they had a lot of guest speakers from different points of view that came. They had legislators. They had Senator Hoylman Siegel and Assembly Member Paulin, who had some legislation that's pending in the legislature, and they talked about what could be done legislatively with respect to this.
And it's front and center as we speak.
And again, that's another task force that worked very hard, very quickly, came up with a report, and now the New York State Bar Association is now advocating in the legislature currently with respect to bills that are pending regarding medical aid in dying. And
the legislators have asked for copies of our report. They're relying on our research. Senator Hoylman Siegel has been a great supporter of the bar. He's certainly listened to us when we were talking about difficulties with the number of family courts and so on. So he's been very involved with a lot of what we've said, and we like having him as a friend and the other legislators as a friend, because it gives us a chance to express what we think is best for society. And I'm not saying that medical aid in dying is best for society. I'm saying that we have a well-researched report that gives options that we feel should be read and listened to.
And there was another task force that you formed that also had a report that is of tremendous significance, not only to the legal profession, but to the public at large, and that's on artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. That artificial intelligence reports can go obsolete in about a day. It's an area that moves so fast. but we devoted a lot of time to artificial intelligence. At the presidential summit in January, we invited experts, real experts from this area to speak. And I cannot say that I'm very conversant in AI, but when I walked out of there, I felt that my knowledge of AI increased exponentially. And then Vivian Wesson, as the chair of this task force, put on a panel and followed it up with this report. And we plan to continue to look at the various aspects of AI that impact lawyers. There are ethical issues, there are issues that would impact confidentiality of clients, and there's so many different things that are raised every day. You can't pick up the Wall Street Journal and not see at least 4 or 5 articles every day about AI.
And so you had a really, I'm going to say, broad and diverse substantive year. I know there was
It's been an interesting year.
Yeah, I know that there was an issue that was very near and dear to your heart, which is civics. And we just got through in May your civics convocation, which I think was a great success. Why don't you talk a little bit about why you think that was so important, and a little bit about the convocation?
Well, first of all, I'm so proud of the people who did that. You know, I don't want to. It sounds like I did these things. Believe me, I just get credit for them. The truth is we had Gail Ehrlich, we had Jay Warona, and we had Christopher Rienu, and they really organized this thing. And our concern is, of course, that the people in the United States, a minority of people can name the 3 branches of government. Fewer can name what the protections that are afforded by the First Amendment. People don't know civics. I candidly think it's an educational issue. I candidly think it's just an issue of taking democracy for granted. And if we take it for granted, we're going to lose it. So we presented a program. It was an all-day program. It was a year in the making. And we had, as a keynote speaker, our Chief Judge, Rowan Wilson. And we had the virtual appearance, an amazing virtual appearance by Associate Justice Sotomayor, who took questions from students. We had participants who were teachers, participants who were from school boards, participants who were students at college and at high school. We had lawyers, we had a lot of people there, a lot of very knowledgeable people. That's one thing you learn about this bar association. There's some amazing people. And when they spoke, I had many people come up to me afterwards and say, you've got to do this more often. You've got to do this again. So I've spoken to President-elect Dominic Napolitano, and I expect that we will continue this effort. It's something that the Bar Association has to do. We're interested in preserving our government and our democracy, and hopefully getting rid of all this fake news.
Right. And of course, Justice Sotomayor talked about that a little bit.
Yep.
What was most impressive to me about Justice Sotomayor's presentation to us, and we were so very grateful to have her time right in the middle of the Supreme Court session.
Yeah. She rushed from that back to her chambers reviewing decisions. So.
Yeah, right. And she was very generous with her time.
She went beyond the amount of time that she had actually allocated.
But what was impressive was she gave introductory remarks for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, but used most of her time to answer the questions from the students, which I think was really informative, and I think kind of touched on a theme that you had both that day and I think throughout your year of listening. It's not just talking, it's listening, and especially listening to the views of people that
absolutely
disagree.
If we're not able to civilly listen and digest what our adversaries are saying, we're missing out on half the story. I often say to young lawyers that their greatest mentors will be their adversaries. And I believe that. I don't think there's a lawyer alive that hasn't stolen an idea from a lawyer that they'd had on the other side of their case. And I want to say one more thing about those questions.
Yeah.
I was listening to those questions, and I was sitting next to the chief judge. And I said to him, these kids are coming up and asking a Supreme Court justice these questions. When I was that age, you couldn't have gotten me up there with a team of horses. And he said, you're right. I mean, these kids were terrific and interested, and it gives you hope.
Right, and of course, Justice Sotomayor was so very gracious and personable.
Right.
I think she really seemed to enjoy it, and
Right.
I think that made it less intimidating.
Absolutely.
I think for everyone, that was really, I think I'd say one of the highlights of your
It was a
of your
highlight.
term.
Certainly a big highlight.
So, you did so much, and I'm sure you came into this with certain expectations, and I'm wondering if you can share, what was different about what you expected versus what it ended up being? Was there anything that was, what about your experience was different than what you expected?
Yeah, well, I think, as I said earlier, events sort of create the direction that you go. And of course, we got the affirmative action decision right there, right then and there. The level of anti-Semitism and anti-Asian hate grew and grew, and then we were confronted with the war. So I expected to be able to be a little bit more focused on legislation and on rules. That's been a hot button for me for a long time, and I think that maybe I was not able to devote as much time to that. There's also other issues that come up, just the general things that happen with any organization, and we had to deal with it. And I have to say that you, David, and Pam really pulled the oars on that. You guys were the ones who really carried the ball, and I can't tell you how appreciative I am, but even more so, how appreciative this whole bar association should be for what you guys and the rest of this amazing staff. They're the ones who are the core. They're the skeleton that you put the skin over. So I really think that it's important to recognize that our staff is the best there is.
Well, I'm sure you'll hear from, and I agree certainly, and I appreciate the kind words. You were certainly a pleasure to work with. You did stay focused on issues that were important to the Bar Association, the New York State Bar Association, and that was very important. And I think that's why we got so much accomplished this year under your term. So, you've got you can't help but come out of this year having learned a great deal. You've had tremendous experiences. You're going to be, down in the Supreme Court for an admission ceremony next week.
That's going to be a thrill.
Yeah, and let me ask you, what do you see? What's your vision for the future, both for the Bar Association or for the legal profession, having been informed by the year that you've just had?
Yeah, I think that the legal profession and the Bar Association, who speaks for the legal profession, will continue to undergo significant challenges. AI is one that we've mentioned. There's different philosophies out there with regard to non-lawyer practice of law, non-lawyer ownership, which we have policy opposing, as does the ABA, by the way, and most states. I think maintaining the sanctity of our profession is something that we really have to pursue and pass on to younger lawyers. I would tell you that I'm so impressed with the lawyers that I've met. We have so many smart people here. We have so many, I go into a room from time to time and I say, my God, I shouldn't even be in this room. But we have some terrific young lawyers. The question is are they going to have that passion that they had when they were naive students applying for law school, or are they going to just get sucked into the business part of the profession? There's more to it than that. When you see certain lawyers and their passion for the professionalism of our profession, it's very impressive, and we just have to continue that tradition.
Well, Dick, we've got a kind of an unwritten rule in the Bar Association where we alternate years between upstate, downstate. You, of course, are from Binghamton. Right. Your president-elect, Dominic Napolitano, who takes office on June 1st, is from Brooklyn. You guys had a great working relationship.
Kathleen Sweet is from Buffalo, so the three Bs,
Right. So we've got all of the state covered, and we have that continuously. But I'm wondering if you have any advice for the successors, Dominic and Kathleen Sweet.
Yeah, I do. First of all, I think Dominic is going to be fabulous, and I also think that Kathleen is going to be absolutely wonderful. I think both of them are dedicated members and are experienced, and I have great faith in both of them. My advice to them, and I was not always successful at this, is don't pay attention to all the noise. There are times when you have to be straightforward and say, look, I understand you feel strongly about a particular subject, but that's not one of our agenda items right now. We'll talk about that at some point. But we have to be focused on, for example, our new subscription model with regard to membership, which I think is going to be wonderful for our members. It's going to be a money saver. It's going to give them many more options. And we're working on that. And that's something that we have to be focused on. There are criticisms that come down, some of them valid, many of them not valid. I think you have to sort of block them out after a while, and you have to say, look, I only have so many hours in the day, and I just don't have time for that. So my suggestion is focus. I don't think there'll be any problem with hard work, because this job does require a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of hard work, a lot of reading, a lot of study. Sometimes you feel like an appellate court judge. You're reading so many different memorandum and rules and laws and so on. So I think it's just very important to stay focused.
Well, Dick, you handled all of your tasks throughout the year with great dignity. I think you served the association well. I'm grateful for your work with the Bar Association, grateful for now your second appearance here on Miranda Warnings. It's always a pleasure.
Well, last time I got a hat. I'm wondering what
I know you should be wearing it. So wonderful to have you again, Dick. Congratulations on a successful term.
Thank you.
And we look forward to hearing more from you here on Miranda Warnings.
Thanks very much.
This has been Miranda Warnings, a New York State Bar Association podcast. You have the right to subscribe, rate, and review.